In the golden age of aviation, one name symbolized adventure, luxury, and innovation in the skies: Pan-American World Airways. From humble beginnings as a small mail carrier in the 1920s to becoming the world's first truly global airline, Pan Am didn't just fly passengers. It defined what modern air travel would become. And yet the same ambition that lifted it to the top would ultimately bring it down. This is the story of how an airline that once connected the world eventually lost its wings. If you enjoy stories about legendary airlines that once ruled the skies and vanished almost overnight, make sure to subscribe for more. When Pan Am was founded in 1927, it was little more than a shell company, a government-backed effort to keep German influence out of Latin American skies. But everything changed when Juan Trippe, a young, fiercely ambitious entrepreneur and former Navy pilot, took control less than a year later. Trippe saw something others didn't. Aviation wasn't just about moving mail, it was about connecting people, nations, and cultures. Under his leadership, Pan Am began buying up struggling airlines across Central and South America, securing key postal routes and creating a vast network that stretched across the hemisphere. By the early 1930s, Pan Am had become the unofficial flag carrier of the United States, enjoying government favor and near-monopoly status on international routes. Trippe's mix of vision and boldness transformed Pan Am from a regional service into the blueprint for global aviation. With its Latin American foundations secured, Pan Am set its sights higher, literally. In the early 1930s, long-distance flight was still a dangerous experiment, but Trippe dreamed of a global air network that spanned oceans and continents. The challenge? There were few runways long enough for large aircrafts, and airport infrastructure was almost non-existent. Trippe's answer was brilliant. Use flying boats, the Sikorsky S-38s, and later the larger S-40, that could land on water. These majestic aircraft, nicknamed Clippers, became icons of the sky and symbols of American ingenuity. By mid-decade, Pan Am had opened routes to Europe through Bermuda and the Azores, and pushed westward across the Pacific. Bases on Midway, Wake Island, and Guam, built from scratch with supplies shipped by sea, made transoceanic flight possible. In 1942, Pan Am's Pacific Clipper completed the first commercial circumnavigation of the globe, a feat once reserved for explorers. A year later, President Franklin D. Roosevelt boarded the Dixie Clipper, becoming the first U.S. president to fly. Pan Am wasn't just an airline anymore, it was rewriting aviation history. But as Pan Am soared higher, the world around it was changing fast, and the skies were about to get far more crowded. When World War II erupted, Pan Am's global reach became more than a commercial advantage. It became a military one. The U.S. government enlisted the airline to move troops, cargo, and vital equipment across oceans where few others could. Most of the company's Clippers were drafted into military service, and a new Pan Am division was created to manage transatlantic supply routes. By the end of the war, Pan Am had evolved into a logistical powerhouse, essential to U.S. military and diplomatic strategy. But as peace returned, so did competition. Dozens of new airlines emerged, and government policy now encouraged open skies. Pan Am had won the war, but a new commercial battle was about to begin. In the late 1940s, aviation shifted from military necessity to civilian dream, and Pan Am led the charge. With its global network already established, the airline entered the post-war era as the world's premier international carrier. The flying boats were retired, replaced by sleek, land-based aircraft like the Lockheed Constellation, pressurized, faster, and capable of flying above bad weather. In 1946, Pan Am even beat rival TWA to launch its first transatlantic Constellation flight, reinforcing its dominance. Just a year later came another world first, the first scheduled round-the-world service connecting cities from San Francisco to Calcutta, from New York to London. Pan Am had become the very embodiment of global connectivity. As the 1950s began, the stage was set for a revolution in the skies, the jet age, and once again, Pan Am would be leading the way. By the early 1950s, the world was ready to fly farther and faster. Pan Am sensed it before anyone else. While rivals hesitated, One Trip was already planning for the leap into jet-powered flight. In 1958, Pan Am became the launch customer for Boeing 707, the aircraft that would redefine modern travel. On October 26th, a Pan Am jet lifted off from New York to Paris, the first scheduled commercial jet flight in history. Once again, the world watched in awe. The 1960s brought even greater ambition. Tripp personally convinced Boeing to design a larger aircraft, the Boeing 747, the Queen of the Skies. In 1970, Pan Am's first 747 flight from JFK to Heathrow ushered in the wide-body era. At its peak, Pan Am was more than an airline. It was an empire in the air. Its blue globe logo, intercontinental hotels, and glamorous crews defined luxury travel. To fly Pan Am was to belong to the new international elite, the world's first true citizens of the sky. But in chasing global dominance, Pan Am had also built an empire too heavy to sustain. Its size, ambition, and cost were about to become its greatest threats. By the mid-1970s, the world Pan Am had helped create began to turn against it. The 1973 oil crisis sent fuel prices skyrocketing by 400%, devastating airlines with large long-haul fleets. For Pan Am, whose empire relied on expensive wide-body jets, the blow was crippling. Aircraft built to carry 400 passengers often flew with barely 50, while costs stayed the same. Within years, Pan Am had $364 million in losses and nearly $1 billion in debt. President William Sewell launched drastic cuts, shrinking routes by 25%, slashing the workforce by 30%, and freezing wages. The airline briefly returned to profit in 1977, but it was smaller, weaker, and facing its biggest challenge yet. The Airline Deregulation Act of 1978 opened U.S. airspace to competition, ending decades of government protection. Pan Am, built for prestige, not efficiency, was suddenly flying blind. When deregulation hit, Pan Am had no domestic network to feed its international flights. Rivals like American and United thrived. Pan Am struggled. In desperation, it purchased National Airlines in 1979 for $437 million, hoping to gain a domestic foothold. Instead, the merger became a disaster. The two airlines had incompatible fleets and clashing cultures. Maintenance crews couldn't service both, and management failed to integrate systems. Between 1979 and 1980, revenue rose 62%, but fuel costs soared 157%, wiping out all gains. To stay alive, Pan Am began selling off assets, its Falcon jet stake, the Pan Am building in Manhattan, even its intercontinental hotels. Piece by piece, the empire crumbled. The 1980s were merciless. Each sale bought time, but stripped away another piece of the airline's soul. Then on December 21st, 1988, tragedy struck. Pan Am Flight 103 exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing 270 people. The bombing devastated public trust and buried Pan Am under $300 million in lawsuits. As if that weren't enough, the Gulf War in 1990 sent fuel prices soaring again, while global travel demand collapsed. On January 8, 1991, Pan Am filed for bankruptcy. Delta Airlines stepped in, buying remaining assets for $416 million, but it wasn't enough. By December 4, 1991, Pan Am operated its final flight, ending 64 years of innovation, elegance, and ambition. The final Clipper touchdown, and with it, the curtain fell on an airline that had defined the golden age of flight. More than 7,500 employees lost their jobs, and a generation of travelers lost the brand that had taught the world to fly. Pan Am's downfall wasn't the result of one mistake, but of many. Deregulation, oil crises, tragedies, and the loss of visionary leadership after tripping. Yet its legacy endured in every international terminal, every airline uniform, and every global route map inspired by its example. As the last blue globe disappeared from the skies, one truth remained. Pan Am didn't just change aviation, it created it.